The Space Force just ordered SpaceX to build a brand new Starship launch pad at Cape Canaveral. This rocket stands 121 meters tall, produces nearly twice the thrust of Saturn V, and can carry up to 150 tons to orbit. Why would the Pentagon invest in something this massive? Because full reusability could make each launch cheaper than Falcon 9, despite being twice the size. How does that math even work? Let's dive right in. To understand why the Pentagon is making this move, you need to see what Starship actually brings to the table. When fully stacked, this vehicle produces 16.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. That's nearly double what Saturn V generated during the Apollo missions. NASA's new Space Launch System, which costs over $4 billion per launch, can't even come close to matching that power. What does that kind of raw capability mean for national security missions? The answer shows up in payload capacity. Falcon 9 revolutionized spaceflight by carrying 22 tons to low Earth orbit at a fraction of traditional costs. The old Delta IV Heavy, which the military relied on for decades, could manage about 28 tons. Even SLS, despite its massive price tag, lifts around 95 tons per flight. Starship is designed to carry 100 to 150 tons without any orbital refueling, and potentially much more when SpaceX perfects their tanker system. For the first time, the U.S. military can launch payloads that were simply impossible before. Does this change the entire strategic equation? Consider what the Pentagon actually needs to put in orbit. Modern missile warning satellites are enormous, packed with sensors that need to detect launches from thousands of miles away. Next-generation communication constellations require dozens of satellites deployed simultaneously to provide global coverage. Some intelligence platforms are so large and so classified that existing rockets can barely lift them, forcing engineers to compromise on capabilities. Starship eliminates those compromises entirely. You can launch the satellite you actually want, not the one you have to settle for because of weight limits. But here's where it gets really interesting. The military has been studying something called rocket cargo for years. Right now, if the U.S. needs to move heavy equipment or supplies to the other side of the planet, they load it onto a C-17 cargo plane. That aircraft can carry about 77 tons, which sounds impressive until you realize it takes most of a day to fly halfway around the world. Combat situations don't wait for convenient flight schedules. What if you could deliver more than 100 tons of cargo to literally anywhere on Earth in under 1 hour? That's not science fiction anymore. Starship could land supplies, equipment, or even rapid response units on any continent faster than current aircraft can cross a single ocean. The implications for military logistics are staggering. Need to reinforce an ally under threat? Deploy humanitarian aid after a disaster? Starship turns response time from days into minutes. No other country has anything close to this capability, and that strategic advantage is exactly what caught the Space Force's attention. SpaceX didn't get this opportunity just because Starship is big and powerful. They earned it through years of flawless performance. Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy have launched some of the most sensitive national security payloads in U.S. history: missile tracking satellites, classified intelligence systems, GPS constellations. Every single mission succeeded. Not only that, SpaceX delivered these launches at costs that made traditional aerospace contractors look like relics from another era. The Atlas IV and Delta IV programs, which dominated military launches for decades, couldn't compete on price or reliability. So when Pentagon analysts evaluated Starship, they weren't looking at an untested prototype from a risky startup. They saw a proven company with operational experience in national security missions, a track record of cost savings, and now a vehicle that could do things no rocket in history has ever done. The decision to order a dedicated Starship pad at Cape Canaveral wasn't made lightly. This is the government saying they're ready to bet their most critical space operations on SpaceX's next-generation system. Cape Canaveral isn't just another launch site. It's the heart of America's space infrastructure, surrounded by tracking stations, secure facilities, and military command centers. Almost every major national security payload lifts off from Florida because the location offers strategic advantages. Launching eastward over the ocean takes full advantage of Earth's rotation, giving rockets extra performance for free. It's also why classified missions need this specific location. controlled airspace, naval range support, and decades of security protocols already in place. What message does it send when the Space Force clears space specifically for Starship? The recent demolition of old launch complexes at the Cape was the first signal. Crews tore down structures that had been there since the space shuttle era, making room for something much larger. Industry observers knew something big was coming, but the official confirmation that it's a Starship pad changes everything. This isn't SpaceX requesting permission to build. This is the military ordering them to establish operations at the nation's premier launch facility. The difference matters, but this partnership comes with serious complications that SpaceX needs to think carefully about. Once a rocket becomes critical to national security, the Pentagon gains significant control over how it operates. Right now, SpaceX can test Starship whenever they're technically ready and the FAA approves. That autonomy disappears under military contracts. What happens when the government decides a launch needs to be delayed, canceled, or reprioritized for classified reasons? Launch schedules would no longer belong to SpaceX alone. During international tensions, the military could freeze commercial flights entirely. If a classified payload needs to go up immediately, every other mission gets pushed back. SpaceX built their entire business model on rapid iteration and high launch cadence. What happens to that philosophy when half their launch schedule is controlled by Pentagon priorities they can't even discuss publicly? Then there's the secrecy problem. Military Starship missions will fall under classified programs with strict information controls. Engineers working on those versions would be restricted in what they can share, even with colleagues inside SpaceX. The company would likely need to split development into civilian and military variants of the vehicle, with separate teams, separate facilities, and separate approval processes. Does that sound like a recipe for fast innovation? This is the trade-off SpaceX faces. The Space Force is offering massive contracts, guaranteed revenue, and a chance to become the backbone of American space power. But accepting that role means giving up some of the freedom that made SpaceX successful in the first place. Can they maintain their culture of rapid development while operating under military oversight? That's the real question nobody's answered yet. Meanwhile, something happened on the other side of the planet that shows exactly why this space race matters. While the Pentagon plans future Starship missions, China just pulled off an emergency rescue operation that proved their space program is far more capable than most people realize. The incident happened aboard the Tiangong space station when ground controllers detected a serious electrical fault in the power management system. This wasn't a minor glitch. The problem affected how electricity flowed between the station's core module and docked spacecraft. If it had spread, the crew could have lost life support, communications, or even been forced to evacuate. How did China respond? Within hours, they activated a full emergency protocol. The 3 astronauts aboard Tiangong shut down non-essential systems to reduce electrical load, while engineers on Earth worked around the clock to isolate the fault. But here's the impressive part. China had a fully fueled Shenzhou spacecraft sitting on the pad, ready to launch as an emergency rescue vehicle on a few hours' notice. They didn't wait to see if the problem would fix itself. They prepared for the worst-case scenario immediately. Does that sound like a space program that's just for show? The astronauts manually traced the problem to a specific electrical subsystem, while a Tianzhou cargo spacecraft launched with spare parts and support equipment. After days of controlled testing, Chinese engineers isolated the damaged system and restored normal operations without the crew ever losing life support. The emergency Shenzhou spacecraft stood down without needing to launch, and the crew completed their mission as planned. What does this tell us about where the space race actually stands? China just demonstrated they can detect failures early, deploy rescue vehicles on short notice, and stabilize a crewed space station under pressure. They're not playing catch-up anymore. They're executing complex operations that rival anything NASA has done. And that's exactly why the Pentagon is betting everything on Starship. This isn't about having a bigger rocket. It's about maintaining strategic dominance in space when your main competitor is moving faster than anyone expected. SpaceX now faces the biggest decision in their history: accept military oversight and become the backbone of American space power, or maintain independence and watch someone else take that role. Either way, the space industry just entered a new era where capability isn't enough. Speed matters, cost matters, and being the partner the government trusts most matters even more. What do you think SpaceX should do? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button and share this video with anyone following the space race. And subscribe to Space Update 24 hours so you never miss the next major development. We're covering this story as it unfolds.